I just need to have my say on this. First of all, I am a Métis woman. My mother is a Plains Cree woman. She was basically taken at birth by an Indian agent who was my grandfather and put up for adoption with his family and was looked after by the federal government until she came of age and could never get a long form birth certificate. It's another story. But so I know the Native people of Canada very well because I didn't grow up on a reserve, but I certainly had a lot of interaction with them as a community growing up. And I and my family have been advocates forever. My grandfather is the founding father of the Métis Nation, and our family has the most comprehensive genealogy record of that group of people in Canada. My sister spent 40 years working on it, and a lot of people that wanted their Métis status would come to our family to prove their blood, because that's the way you have to do it. You have to prove your bloodline. So I absolutely disagree with Jeff Rath. I can't even be, I'm disgusted, actually. I think he might be part of the Aboriginal industry. He's a consultant, probably to the industry. And Frances Widdowson wrote an amazing book about that, and I encourage you to take a look at it, because it is a big industry. I think we're pumping something like $40 billion a year, and a lot of these reserves are not even showing that on their balance sheets. I've had a look at their balance sheets, and I don't see all the money. I don't know where the money is going. They didn't get into that in this video, but the idea that 300,000 people would be effectively losing their rights because they would be, in my opinion, elevated to a higher status as a Canadian citizen or a citizen of Alberta, which is what Jeff Rath is saying, is that they would be stripped of their rights and that the idea of them having the same citizenship as everybody else is some a communist system for them is so patently insulting and odious. It beggars belief that anybody could even consider that that's what would be the outcome. Now, he's a big proponent of transgenerational rights. And he believes that the province was built on the backs of the Cree Nation, the Blackfoot Nation. There's many different nations. I actually did a documentary about the history of Canada, and because we have castles, chateaus, armories, post offices, legislative buildings that are so magnificent, that you couldn't even replicate them today. And they are right across Canada. So the history of this country is very dubious, to say the least. What I found out during my documentary was that all of these buildings were apparently built by the Crown at the exact same time when they were fighting world wars, and all the labor and all the material was brought over to build them. So our history is really not believable, okay? It's entirely possible that the Indian people of Canada were brought over from Russia by the fur traders and were basically assimilated by the Jesuits and given all of their myths by the Jesuits to be sort of a fifth column in Canada. Excuse me for that. And they basically have been stomped on, by this Crown from as far back as our history goes. And when I say stomped on, I mean that they've been useful to the Crown for many, many different reasons. They always fought on the side of the Crown. Tecumseh, who was an Indian warrior in Ontario, I can't remember what tribe he was from, he called the British his father. And they have always, always been on the side of the Crown. And the Crown conquered Canadians. We were not consulted about Confederation. We were not consulted about the 1982 Constitution Act, which basically is sort of a dead document. And if you want to know more about that, just look into the work Canada the Illusion. It's pinned on my profile on X. So we are not set up properly to be a real proper independent country right now. We are basically sort of a middle power for the Crown, for the European crowns. And you don't have to look very far to see what is happening right now in Europe with Mark Carney at the European Summit, where we are now going to be increasing our spending for NATO, and we're going to be, rebuilding European defenses, and we're going to be sending money for Ukraine. And these are all offshore investments. And I don't even know how we're going to even come up with all this money, considering that something like 1 in 4 people work for the government in Canada. And, the bureaucracy has now become so top-heavy that it's really hard to get even the minimum. You need a license for everything, or some kind of regulation, or some kind of regulatory body. So how are we going to pay for that? And at the same time that that's happening, we have all kinds of foreign fifth columns, marching around in Ottawa every week. Daisy Media covers that. We have them basically tying up our traffic, agitating all the time. And a lot of those people are working in our government. The actual, real, true Canadian people are not having the same opportunities for employment because foreigners are being subsidized. So not only has Canada set up the Native Indians as a special group, special rights, but they're setting up immigrants offshore coming into our country now as another class who get special benefits, special, special, income from the government. Their wages are subsidized, so it's preferable to hire them. They get welfare. They get opportunity to bring their families over. They take advantage of our healthcare system. They take care of all of our social services. So Jeff Rath is really, he's working, obviously, he must be working for the Crown, in my opinion, because his argument does not stand up to scrutiny, and he results in, the way that he's dealing with Bruce Party's very, very excellent presentation is by insulting him and ad hominem attacks. But really what Bruce Party is saying is that everybody needs to have a level playing field to have a really good country, not special. So I think it's really unfortunate that the Alberta Prosperity Project is getting a lot of eyeballs, but I noticed that the Americans are not that thrilled with them, and they don't really lift them up in their social media accounts. I don't think they're taken very seriously probably because of this very issue. Because in America, the Indians are considered a dependent nation within a nation, and they don't get all that kind of money. They don't get they're not used as a fifth column like they are in Canada. So that's all I have to say about that. Bye for now.